Resolve within your soul that for the coming year, failure has been struck from the ledger of possibility. Do not view success as a mere likelihood or a convenient hope. View it as an absolute necessity. I do not ask you to adopt this mindset because the world is without its storms or because a smooth path has been laid for your feet, but because you have made the supreme choice to bar the door against retreat. The majority of men, I have observed, keep a secret exit in their minds, a prepared apology for why they did not reach the mark, a story of unfortunate circumstances to tell when the trial grows too hot. But I tell you plainly, that hidden avenue of escape is the very reason they never arrive at the summit. Life, in its stern and just administration, yields only to the man of total commitment. Ask yourself, with the unflinching honesty required in the counting house, if you knew with the certainty of a mathematical law that you could not fail this year, how would you carry yourself this very hour? What would be the tone of your voice? What habits of waste or idle talk would you cast aside at once? The excuses that today seem like reasonable explanations would vanish like mist before the sun if you truly decided that victory was your only destination. Men who rise from the humble cottage to manage the great industries of our nation do not begin with a purse full of gold. They begin with a refusal. They refuse to dicker with doubt. They refuse to accept the lowly station to which they were born as a permanent decree. They refuse to offer reasons for why they are not yet ready for the burden of leadership. You have read the histories of successful men, but perhaps you have read them with a clouded eye. You see the finished monument, the vast works, and the honors bestowed by the public. You do not see the lonely hours of the apprentice, the nights of study by a single candle, or the moments when every prudent voice in the world screamed that it was time to surrender. Those men did not prevail because they were born without fear. They became masters because they refused to let fear hold the reins of their conduct. They acted as if success were an inevitable law, and in doing so, they compelled the world to make it so. Acting as if a venture might succeed leads only to a timid and half-hearted effort, which is the parent of failure. But acting as if it must succeed gives birth to the genius of invention. When the usual path is blocked, the man who has no retreat builds a new road or lays a track through the wilderness. The year ahead must not be left to the whims of chance if it is to be a year of achievement. You must purge the language of the hesitant from your mind. Words such as try, perhaps, or someday are the rust that corrodes the iron will before the work is begun. Look at your daily walk. Your habits are the prophecies of your future. Do you move with the steady step of a man who expects to take the prize, or do you loiter like one who is already preparing his defense for coming up short? In the empire of business, we do not wait for the sun to be at high noon before we start the journey. We move by the light of our own decision. Once that decision is made final, the mind, by a law of nature, marshals all its forces to ensure its fulfillment. The path I describe is one of long obscurity, of being misunderstood, and of meeting obstacles that the world calls defeats. You will see much of your own struggle in these lessons, but mark this: success is not a gift from a kind fate. It is the reward of the man who has reached the point where the cost of quitting is greater than any hardship of continuing. That is the resolve I invite you to make today. If failure is impossible, then the thief of distraction is no longer tolerated. The ease of the tavern or the comfort of the idle hour becomes suspicious to you. You stop asking how long the road is and start asking what stone must be moved today. This is not the spirit of the gambler, it is the spirit of the builder. When failure is removed from the mind, the eye becomes sharp and the hand steady. Time is seen as the capital of the soul, not to be squandered. Your energy is no longer wasted in the friction of inner debate. You are not behind. You are at the precise moment where a man's choice hardens into his destiny. The great figures of our age were not men of magic. They were often men of exhaustion and deep doubt, but they made one quiet, irrevocable vow: I shall go on. Act as if this year is your appointed time, not because it is owed to you, but because you will no longer permit the faculties God gave you to sit in the rust of inaction. As we proceed, do not look for a pleasant dream, but for a solid anchor in the laws of character. By the time we have finished this lesson, the thought of retreat will be as foreign to you as the idea of the earth standing still. This is the law of alignment. When a man's thoughts and his labors are unified, the world eventually complies. It is not a matter of luck, it is a matter of law. The law of irrevocable decision, burning the bridge to failure. Every man reaches a crossroads where he must choose between a life of hesitation and a life of law. The average man lingers at this junction until his hair is gray and the world has made the choice for him. But the man destined for the empire of business seizes that moment in his youth. He declares to himself, I will, and therefore I must. From that instant, the unseen forces of character begin to move in his favor. The world does not bow to mere talent or even to intellect, for our streets are full of clever men who are failures. It bows to decision. A definite mind is a creative force. A wavering mind is but a shadow that produces nothing. Most men avoid the hour of decision because they fear the finality of it. They want to keep their options open. They leave back doors available, excuses they call prudence or safety. Yet it is these very exits that prevent them from ever reaching the goal. You cannot put your full weight into the push if you are looking over your shoulder for a way out. Consider the history of the great commanders of old. Upon landing on a hostile shore, they ordered their own ships to be put to the torch. As the smoke rose, the soldiers knew there was no return voyage. They had to conquer the land or find a grave in its soil. That act was not a piece of theater, it was the highest form of clarity. It unified the will. In your own life, you must burn the ships of if and but. When you decide without the possibility of retreat, you tap into a reservoir of power that is closed to the hesitant. Fear cannot live in the heart of a man who has made a final choice. Fear requires an alternative to survive. It feeds on the other path. When there is only one path, fear starves for lack of nourishment. There is a vast difference between the man who hopes to succeed and the man who has decided to succeed. The hopeful man speaks with a question in his voice, seeking the world's permission to be great. The decided man speaks as if the deed were already recorded in the books of history. His very presence changes the atmosphere of a room. Take, for instance, the story of Edwin C. Barnes. He had no money, no social standing, and no invitation, but he had a decision. He would be the partner, not the servant, of Thomas Edison. He didn't say he would try to find a job. He said he would become a partner. He rode a freight train like a common laborer to reach Mr. Edison's office. He looked like a beggar, but his eyes spoke with the authority of a king. Edison himself said that Barnes's look of absolute certainty was what won him the chance. Barnes didn't start at the top. He started by sweeping floors, but his decision was steel. Years passed, yet he never looked for a different job. He didn't have a plan B. When the opportunity finally arrived to sell a machine that others had failed with, he seized it because he had been a partner in his mind for 5 years. He made a fortune because he had burned every boat except the one that led to his goal. The universe respects the final word. When your mind is fixed, the events of your life begin to fall into an orderly line. People will appear with the very help you need. Ideas will spark in your mind that you never could have forced.
Hesitation is a leak in the boiler. It wastes the steam that should be driving the engine. Decision is the plate that holds the pressure until it becomes power. Think of Henry Ford when he demanded the V8 engine. His engineers told him it was a physical impossibility to cast such a thing in one block. He didn't debate the science with them. He simply said, "Produce it anyway." They worked for a year and failed. He told them to keep working. They failed again. But because his command was a decree, not a suggestion, they eventually found the way. That engine changed the world, not because of a new discovery in physics, but because of a man's decision. I tell you, write your aim down. Speak it to the walls of your room until you believe the sound of your own voice. The mind must be disciplined to accept this new truth. A man who speaks his goal once is a dreamer. The man who repeats it every morning and every night is a builder. Consistency is the law. The repeated thought carves a channel in the brain, and soon your actions will flow through that channel without effort. Decision alters your very bearing. It gives you a bound-to-win look that people can feel. It is magnetism. Indecision is repulsion. When you have decided, the inner noise stops. The what-ifs are silenced by the I will. This silence is the foundation of true confidence. It is the peace of the man who knows the bridge behind him is gone. In that stillness, your mind becomes an instrument of high purpose. Do not fear a wrong decision as much as you fear no decision. Life corrects the man in motion. If you steer a ship, you can turn it, but you cannot steer a ship that is sitting still in the harbor. Better to move and adjust than to rot in the dock of prudence. Each act of decision strengthens your will like a muscle. Burn the boats, burn the excuses, burn the identity of the man you used to be, the one who was afraid of the world's opinion. Step on to the shore of your new purpose and know that there is no turning back. This is the first law of the empire of business. You are not waiting for a sign. You are the sign. The moment of choice is the moment of your rebirth. Once you have crossed that line, do not look back, for on that shore you will find that all true security is found in the fire of your own resolve.
I trust you have spent some time contemplating the gravity of an irrevocable decision. To burn one's ships is a noble beginning, but a fire, once lit, must be tended with a steady hand and an unyielding spirit. This brings us to the second pillar of our lesson, the law of mental command, or what I prefer to call faith as applied power. You see, a decision is the spark, but it is faith that sustains the engine when the hills grow steep and the coal runs low. I must caution you, do not mistake faith for the fleeting whims of emotion. The average man confuses the two to his great detriment. Emotion is like the spring freshet. It rushes forth with great noise and enthusiasm when the sun shines, only to vanish when the frost returns. You cannot build a lasting fortune or a reputable character upon the shifting sands of how you feel on a Tuesday morning. True faith is a disciplined act of the will. It is the habit of holding one thought as an absolute truth, regardless of what the morning newspapers or the critics in the counting house may say. In the world of business, we do not look for permission from circumstances. The man who possesses this applied power does not beg life for an opportunity. He declares his readiness, and by the very weight of that conviction, opportunity is compelled to appear. There is a precise law at work here, as reliable as the laws of steam or electricity. The subconscious mind, that silent partner in all our ventures, accepts a repeated thought as a direct order. If you feed it doubt, it will manufacture failure with tireless efficiency. If you feed it a definite belief, it will organize your every faculty to fulfill that decree. Consider the case of a young minister I once knew in the city of Chicago, Dr. Gonsalus. He possessed a vision for a great school where the youth of our country could learn the practical arts of industry alongside the refinements of the mind. For years he hoped for the means, he wished for a benefactor, but wishing is the occupation of the idle. One day he reached the point of decision. He resolved that he would raise $1 million, a staggering sum in those days, within 8 days. He did not go out to plead for alms. Instead, he prepared a sermon that was not a request, but a declaration. He stood before his congregation and spoke with such a tone of certainty that the very air seemed to vibrate with the reality of his college. He spoke as if the bricks were already laid and the students already gathered. After the service, a gentleman stepped forward, Mr. Philip Armour, a man of great affairs, and said, "Doctor, I believe you mean what you say. Come to my office and the money is yours." The miracle was not in Mr. Armour's generosity, it was in the doctor's shift from hope to command. When a man speaks from the rock of certainty, he moves the hearts of other men as surely as a magnet moves iron filings. You must learn to govern your speech with the same precision you would use in a financial audit. The fatal words of the week are, "I shall try," or "if conditions permit." These are the signals of a divided house. The man who is bound to win does not say if, he says when. He does not say maybe, he says it is settled. You must speak your purpose daily, not to the world, for the world loves to scoff, but to yourself. Speak it until the sound of your own voice carries the weight of an executive order. The mind is a servant that requires a master. If you do not command it with faith, it will be led astray by the whispers of the fearful. I have observed that the universe has a profound respect for finality. When you hold a belief with such tenacity that you refuse to entertain its opposite, you are cooperating with the highest laws of nature. This is what the great inventors have always done. Think of Mr. Edison in his laboratory. He did not hope the incandescent lamp would work. He knew the law existed to make it work, and he simply labored until he found the right material to manifest that law. When he encountered 1,000 materials that failed, he did not call them defeats. He said, "I have successfully identified 1,000 ways that will not work, which brings me nearer to the one that will." That is faith in action. It is the refusal to let the evidence of the eyes overrule the conviction of the mind. Faith and labor are the twin pistons of success. Neither can move the car without the other. The man who claims to have faith but sits with idle hands is a dreamer of the most dangerous sort. But the man who works without faith, who works only because he fears the bailiff or the breadline, is a slave to his environment. The master combines them. He decides, he believes, and then he acts as if the result were already guaranteed by a contract signed by the Creator himself. Each stroke of his hammer, each entry in his ledger is an act of worship toward his goal. Do not be dismayed when doubt attempts to re-enter your thoughts. It is a persistent beggar. You do not fight doubt with anger, you overrule it with purpose. A captain does not argue with a cabin boy who fears the storm. He simply keeps his hand on the tiller and points the ship toward the harbor. When the inner voice whispers, "What if you fail?" you must answer, "That question has been struck from the record." You must train your mind as a general trains his troops. Within a season of 90 days of such discipline, you will find that your mind no longer drifts to the shoals of uncertainty. It will stay on the course of its own accord. This applied power changes your very atmosphere. You will find that men who once ignored you now seek your counsel. You will find that capital, which is notoriously timid, begins to flow toward you. This is not luck. It is the result of your energy being organized rather than scattered. 100 men working in a mob can achieve nothing, but 100 men organized into a disciplined company can move a mountain. So it is with your thoughts. 1,000 scattered thoughts of maybe produce a life of nothing. One thought of "I will," held with unyielding faith, produces an empire.
Remember, my friends, that the great law of cause and effect never sleeps. If you provide the cause, which is a definite purpose backed by an unwavering mental command, the effect must follow as surely as the harvest follows the sowing. You are the architect of your own mental state. Choose to live in the mansion of certainty rather than the hovel of doubt. Speak the word, hold the thought, and perform the work. When you do this, you are no longer a leaf blown by the wind. You are the wind itself, moving the world toward your chosen end.
I trust that the concept of applied power has begun to take root in your understanding. To command the mind is a noble endeavor, but faith without the sweating brow of labor is merely a phantom, a pleasant daydream that builds no factories and launches no ships. This brings us to the third essential law, the law of relentless effort, or the discipline of working as if the prize were already safely in your grasp. In the school of experience, I have learned that the universe does not yield its treasures to the man who merely asks, nor even to the man who merely believes. It yields to the man who proves his belief through sustained, organized, and tireless industry. There is a wide gulf between the wishful worker and the relentless builder. The wishful worker is constantly looking at the clock and the sky, asking, "Will this ever bear fruit?" This very doubt acts as a brake upon his progress, for a man divided between labor and worry moves at only half speed. But the relentless builder says, "This result is a mathematical certainty under the law, therefore I shall put my hand to the plow and never look back." You must understand that labor, when performed in harmony with a definite purpose, ceases to be a drudgery and becomes a form of creation. To the unrefined mind, the daily task of the counting house or the mill is a weary burden to be cast off as soon as the whistle blows. But to the man who has decided that failure is impossible, every stroke of the pen and every turn of the wheel is a sacred seed being sown in the garden of his destiny. He does not count the hours, for he knows that the law of cause and effect is keeping a ledger far more accurate than any human clerk. I recall my own early days as a telegraph messenger in Pittsburgh. I did not view that humble position as a place to linger, but as the first step upon a ladder of infinite height. I made it my business to know every street and every firm in the city, to recognize every face, and to understand the very pulse of the business world around me. I worked as if the entire telegraph company depended upon my speed and accuracy. I did not wait for a promotion to act like a leader. I acted with such relentless diligence that the promotion became an inevitability. The man who does only what he is paid for will never be paid for anything more. But the man who performs more service and better service than is expected of him, he is the man who eventually commands his own price. Think of Mr. Edison, whose name I have mentioned before. His laboratory was not merely a place of thought, but a theater of heroic action. He would often remain at his workbench for days on end, sleeping on a wooden crate, his mind so fused with his purpose that the needs of the body were forgotten. His assistants were often weary, but Edison moved with a vitality that seemed to draw from an unseen source. When people called him a genius, he famously replied that genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. He understood that the law of relentless effort is the only way to refine the crude ore of an idea into the pure gold of a finished invention. You must treat your time as the most precious capital you possess. A day squandered in idle talk or aimless wandering is not merely a loss of hours, it is a breach of contract with your own soul. To profess that you are bound for success while you loiter in the tavern of distraction is the height of hypocrisy. True faith demands a discipline of action that is absolute. Keep your schedule as if the fate of a nation hung upon your punctuality, for in truth, the fate of your own personal empire does hang upon it. The law of the empire of business is constancy.
I have seen many men of brilliant parts start a venture with a fever of excitement, only to cool as soon as the first frost of difficulty arrived. They work by fits and starts and wonder why their harvest is meager. But the steady, plodding man, the one who adds one brick to his wall every day, regardless of the weather, is the one who eventually gazes upon his finished mansion. The sun does not move in bursts, it rises with a majestic and certain rhythm. You must do the same. If you work 3 days with intensity and then rest 3 days in regret, you have gained no ground. You have merely exhausted yourself in the friction of starting and stopping. Do not be discouraged if your labor seems at first to go unrewarded. The farmer does not plant his corn in the morning and expect to reap the ear by sunset. He knows that the law of growth requires time, and he spends that time in weeding and watering. So it must be with you. Your relentless effort is the water and the sun that bring your decision to fruition. There is no such thing as luck in the sense that the world uses the word. What men call luck is simply the point where long, patient preparation meets a fleeting opportunity. The man who is loitering will never see the opportunity, or if he does, he will not be ready to seize it. Direct your energy toward one single definite aim. The greatest cause of failure among industrious men is the scattering of their forces. They try to do too many things at once, and thus they do nothing well. 1,000 tiny streams may make a pleasant sound, but they cannot turn a great mill wheel. You must dam those streams and force them into one single powerful channel. When all your labor is focused on one goal, you become irresistible. This is why I say, put all your eggs in one basket, and then watch that basket with a vigilance that never sleeps. Remember the story of Mr. Darby, who went west to mine for gold. He labored for months until he struck a vein, but then the vein vanished. After a short period of further digging, he grew weary and sold his machinery to a junk man for a pittance. That junk man had the wisdom to call in an engineer who discovered that Darby had stopped exactly 3 feet from the richest vein of gold in the territory. Darby returned home and used that bitter lesson to become one of the greatest salesmen of his age. He resolved that he would never again stop because someone said no or because the way grew hard. Persistence is the twin of effort. The man who works as if success were certain cannot be stopped, for every no he hears is to him merely a signal that he is closer to the final yes. The road to success is often monotonous. There is a great deal of repetition in the mastery of any craft, but in that monotony lies the secret of power. The craftsman who repeats his stroke 10,000 times is not merely making a product, he is making himself. He is building the character of a master. Do not look for constant inspiration, look for the steady rhythm of duty. When you move daily, even in the smallest steps, you generate a momentum that carries you through the dark hours. You will find that as you commit to this law, your physical and mental endurance will increase. The man who is divided in his mind tires easily, but the man who is unified by a single purpose draws strength from the work itself. I have found that the most tiring thing in the world is to do nothing, or to do a task with only half a heart. When you give your whole soul to your labor, you enter into the very joy of creation. Fatigue will still visit you, but it will be the healthy fatigue of the victor, not the sour exhaustion of the slave. Let your labor be organized and orderly. Disorder is a thief that steals both time and energy. A man who begins his day without a plan is a man who is asking for chaos to lead him. Spend the final hour of each day preparing the tasks for the next. When you rise, you should know exactly which stone you are going to move first. This orderliness gives you a calm authority over your affairs. It allows you to work with a quiet mind, even in the midst of a bustling market. There will be those who call your intensity ambition, as if it were a vice. Do not answer them. Let your results be your only defense. The world is full of critics who have never built anything. They spend their lives explaining why things cannot be done. You must have a deaf ear for such talk. Your duty is to produce, to build, and to serve. In the end, the very men who mocked your diligence will be the ones standing in line to ask for a position in your firm. So, I charge you, work as if every hour were a piece of gold that you are depositing in the bank of your future. Work with a smile, for you know the outcome is already settled by the law of inevitability. Work with persistence, for 3 feet more may lie the treasure you seek. And work with organization, for a disciplined life is the only vessel strong enough to hold a great fortune. This is the third law. It is the law that turns the dreamer into the millionaire and the apprentice into the master. Continue in this way, and you will find that the world begins to make room for you, as it always does for the man who knows where he is going and is willing to labor to get there.
I trust you have taken to heart the necessity of relentless labor. But even the most industrious arm will falter if the mind behind it is a theater of discord. To build a lasting monument in the world of affairs, one must first establish a sovereign government within his own breast. This brings us to the fourth essential law, the law of inner government, or the absolute mastery of thought, emotion, and speech. You see, my friends, a man's greatest adversary is never the competitor across the street. It is the confusion within his own soul. I have seen men of great promise pull themselves apart because their thoughts moved in one direction, their feelings in another, and their tongues in a third. No empire can stand with a divided cabinet, and no man can achieve greatness until he has brought his internal faculties into a single, disciplined rank. This is self-rule, the only foundation upon which any true dominion can be built. The world is a mirror that reflects the tone of your inner kingdom. If your thoughts are chaotic and fearful, you will find that your business affairs reflect that same instability. If your emotions are ungoverned, if you are a slave of anger or a victim of despondency, your relationships with your fellow men will crumble. But when the inner kingdom is orderly, when every thought is made to serve your definite aim, and every word is weighed for its worth, then life itself begins to obey your command. You must become as deliberate with your internal world as a master weaver is with his loom. Not every stray notion deserves a place on the throne of your attention. I have observed that the men who fail after reaching a measure of success are almost always destroyed from within. They mistook impulse for freedom. They allowed the pride of wealth to unseat the discipline that created it. They spoke too quickly, reacted too passionately to slights, and let the fever of excitement blind their judgment. Remember this: the man who cannot master himself is not fit to master a mill or a bank. His downfall is written in the first uncontrolled emotion he permits to lead him. Think of Mr. Rockefeller, a man whose composure was legendary in the oil trade. I recall a time during a severe financial panic when the markets were in a state of absolute terror. Men were running to and fro, white-faced and trembling, certain that ruin was upon them. But John D. remained as calm as a summer morning. When asked his secret, he essentially replied that when others lose their heads, a man must keep his own. That calmness was not an accident of birth. It was a law he had imposed upon himself. He trained his mind to respond to chaos with the precision of a mathematical formula. While his competitors were burning their energy in panic, he was quietly planning his next move. Fortune favors the calm, because calmness preserves the power of judgment. You must learn the art of the deliberate response. Between the events of the day and your reaction to them, you must place the filter of your will. Before you speak, ask yourself, will these words build up my purpose or tear it down? Before you allow a feeling of resentment to take root, ask, does this emotion strengthen my arm or weaken my heart? Each such pause is a deposit in the bank of character. The ungoverned man spends his life repairing the damage done by his own tongue. The self-governed man moves without such waste. Silence, I have found, is often the loudest expression of power. The man who speaks little, but whose words are always backed by thought, carries a weight that the noisy man can never possess.
In my own life, I learned early that to listen is often more profitable than to talk. Control of speech is control of creation. Your words set forces in motion. Once spoken, they are like arrows that cannot be recalled. Therefore, speak only those words you are willing to see made into a reality. Consider the character of Mr. Lincoln. He endured the most savage ridicule and the burden of a nation torn asunder, yet he ruled himself with a gentleness and a restraint that were truly sublime. He understood that leadership is a matter of moral equilibrium. He did not win men through shouting or displays of temper. He won them through the quiet, immovable strength of his own mastered spirit. His internal government was the pillar upon which the republic rested. You must strive for that same equilibrium. Every evening, I urge you to practice the discipline of reflection. Sit in the silence of your own room and review the ledger of your day. Where did you lose your temper? Where did you speak idly or out of vanity? Where did fear whisper a lie to you? Do not judge yourself with cruelty, but acknowledge these lapses with the cold eye of a bookkeeper. To name a weakness is to begin its cure. Replace the habit of worry with the habit of planning. Anxiety is merely thought that has lost its way. Planning is thought that has found its work. Every moment you spend in worry is an act of rebellion against the faith you profess. Furthermore, you must guard the gates of your mind against the poisons of envy and self-pity. Envy is the confession of a small soul. It assumes that there is not enough success to go around, but the man of faith knows that abundance is a law and that another man's gain does not subtract from his own. Self-pity is a paralysis that kills initiative. The moment you begin to complain of your lot, you have handed the reins of your life over to circumstance. Gratitude is the only antidote. Start and end your day by acknowledging the progress you have made, the health you enjoy, and the opportunity that lies before you. Gratitude transforms your inner energy from a leak into a flood. I charge you to speak no ill of your neighbor and to entertain no gossip. These are the occupations of the powerless. The time a man spends criticizing his competitor is time he has stolen from his own advancement. If you must speak of others, speak of their virtues. If they have none, keep your peace. A clean mind is a clear lens through which you can see the path to success. Inner government is not a matter of suppressing your nature, but of organizing it. Just as a great symphony requires many instruments to play in harmony under the direction of a conductor, so your thoughts and emotions must be brought under the baton of your will. When your faith holds the baton, even your fears are made to play a useful part in the music of your achievement. You will notice that as you gain this mastery, your very presence will begin to affect others. You will radiate a quiet authority that needs no boast. People will feel that you are a man of substance, one who is not easily moved by the winds of opinion. This steadiness will unnerve the undisciplined, but it will attract the capable. The leader's calm is the most persuasive argument he possesses. 90 days of such vigilance, of watching your thoughts, tempering your emotions, and measuring your words, will change the very texture of your life. You will find that you no longer react to every slight or disappointment. You will stop wasting your vital energy in emotional labor that produces no profit. While others are tiring themselves in the arena of noise and reaction, you will be building your empire in the quietude of a mastered soul. Remember, my friends, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Close the leaks in your character by seeking a total unity of being. Think what you believe, speak what you think, do what you say. This alignment is the ultimate authority. Each day lived in this inner harmony adds a visible dignity to your walk and a certain power to your hand. You are the master of your fate only because you have first become the captain of your soul. This is the law of inner government, and without it, all the wealth in the world is but a burden and a snare. Establish your kingdom within, and the world without will surely follow.
Part 5. The Law of Inevitability. Living in the Finished Result. When a man has disciplined his arm to labor without ceasing, and has brought his inner house into such perfect order that his thoughts, emotions, and speech move as a single phalanx, he stands at the threshold of the highest realization in the empire of business. This is the law of inevitability. It is the state wherein a man no longer tries to succeed, but rather lives and moves as if the success he seeks has already been recorded in the ledgers of time. You must understand, my friends, that in the eyes of the great administrator of this universe, a cause and its effect are not two separate things. They are the two ends of a single rod. If you have provided the cause through your irrevocable decision and your relentless industry, the effect is already a mathematical certainty. To live as if success belongs to you is not a piece of vanity. It is the highest form of faith and the most practical of all business methods. The world, I have noticed, is full of men who wait for the proof of success before they allow themselves to adopt the bearing of a successful man. They wait for the bank balance to swell before they practice the economy and foresight of a financier. They wait for the title of manager before they exercise the responsibility of a leader. But they have the order of nature reversed. In this life, identity must always precede the event. You do not wait for the sun to rise before you declare that it is day. You know the law of the turning earth, and you prepare for the light while the world is yet dark. So it must be with your career. If you wish to stand at the head of a great enterprise, you must begin this very hour to think like a master, to speak with the calm authority of a man of affairs, and to treat your time with the sacred reverence of a trustee of a great estate. I recall the early years of my friend John D. Rockefeller. Long before the Standard Oil Company was a name that shook the markets of the world, John D. conducted himself with a precision that suggested he was already the steward of a vast fortune. He was a clerk in a commission house, yet he kept his personal accounts with such scrupulous accuracy that not a penny was ever unaccounted for. He did not wait for millions to arrive before he learned how to manage money. He mastered the law of the penny, and the millions followed by necessity. He moved with a quiet, unhurried step that unsettled those who lived by the whims of the moment. He was not hoping for a fortune. He was preparing a vessel strong enough to hold one. When the great opportunities of the oil trade arrived, they did not find a man who was surprised or unprepared. They found a man who had been living in the finished result for years. The law of inevitability demands that you strike the word possibility from your vocabulary and replace it with certainty. When a man is certain, his energy is no longer wasted in the friction of doubt. Think of the steam engine. If the boiler has a dozen leaks, the pressure will never rise high enough to turn the great wheels. Doubt is a leak in the soul. But when you plug every hole with the iron of certainty, the pressure of your purpose builds until it becomes an irresistible force. You begin to walk with what I call the bound-to-win look. It is a presence that is felt in the boardroom and the workshop alike. It is not a matter of shouting or boasting. Indeed, the loudest man is often the most uncertain. It is a quiet, immovable confidence that says to the world, the outcome is already settled. I am merely here to execute the details. You must begin to adopt the habits of the man you intend to be. If your aim is to be a master of industry, do not spend your evenings in idle gossip or at the tavern. Spend them as a master would, in the study of the great laws of trade, in the refinement of your character, and in the company of those whose minds are larger than your own. If you wish to be known as a man of integrity, do not wait for a great temptation to test your honor. Practice an absolute, rigid honesty in the smallest transactions of the day. The man who is faithful in that which is least is inevitably called to be ruler over much.
This is not a promise of some distant future. It is a law that operates with the same precision as gravity. I have seen men of mediocre talent rise to great heights simply because they refused to entertain any thought that contradicted their final success. They were not dreamers in the idle sense. They were men of a definite major purpose. They held their aim with such tenacity that it became a mental magnet, drawing to them the people, the capital, and the circumstances required for its manifestation. You will find that when you live as if success is inevitable, your perception changes. You begin to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. You hear the still small voice of intuition, which is the guidance of infinite intelligence, directing you to the right move at the right hour. The man who is worried and fearful is too noisy within to hear such guidance, but the man who is calm in his certainty is a clear channel for power. Do not be misled by the appearance of ill fortune. In the life of every successful man, there are periods where the clouds gather and the path seems blocked. The weak man takes this as a sign that he has failed, and he retreats. But the man who lives in the finished result knows that a storm is often the very thing needed to clear the air. He knows that every adversity carries within it the equivalent seed of benefit. I have often found that my greatest advances in the steel trade came immediately after a period of intense struggle. The struggle was the school that prepared me for the expansion. If you are certain of the end, you can look upon the difficulties of the present with a smile, knowing they are but the refiner's fire that is burning away the dross of your old character. There is a profound psychological truth in the act of gratitude. I urge you to begin and end each day by giving thanks for your success as if it were already a physical fact. This is not a hollow ritual, it is the highest use of the mind. By thanking the great administrator for the fortune you have decided to earn, you are aligning your subconscious mind with the law of abundance. You are declaring that you are ready for the burden and the blessing. This state of gratitude keeps you from the sourness of envy and the bitterness of competition. You no longer feel you must snatch success from another. You know that you are creating it by law, and the supply is infinite for the man who knows how to claim it. You must also be a trustee of your vision. A man who has been entrusted with a great idea has a moral obligation to treat it with dignity. Do not hawk your plans in every marketplace. Do not seek the approval of those who have never accomplished anything. A great vision, like a great fortune, requires a certain reserve and dignity. Walk among your fellows with a quiet modesty, but let your eyes show that you are a man who has a secret understanding with destiny. This air of mystery and certainty is more persuasive than 1,000 arguments. It draws men to you. It makes them want to be part of your ventures. It makes capital feel safe in your hands. To live as if failure is impossible is to live with a supreme economy of effort. When you no longer spend your nights wondering if you will succeed, you have a vast amount of energy available for the work of how. You become a master of detail. You look at every part of your business with a cold, clear eye, asking how it can be improved, how waste can be eliminated, how service can be multiplied. The man of certainty is never a man of good enough. He is a man of perfection, because he knows that he is building a monument that must stand for generations. His work is his signature upon the world. I charge you to remember that time is the most valuable raw material in the empire of business. The man who lives in the finished result does not kill time, he invests it. Every hour is seen as a block of stone in the temple of his achievement. He is punctual, he is precise, and he is persistent. He knows that he does not have a moment to waste in self-pity or in the defense of his ego. If he makes a mistake, he acknowledges it, corrects it, and moves on. He does not brood over the past, for his eyes are fixed on the inevitable future. He is a man of the forward look. As you adopt this mindset, you will find that the world begins to conspire in your favor. This is what the unrefined call luck, but I tell you, it is the law of attraction in its most practical form. A mind that is filled with the certainty of success becomes a magnet for successful conditions. A man who carries himself as a leader will find that men are looking for someone to lead them. A man who manages his small affairs with the wisdom of a financier will find that larger affairs are soon placed in his hands. You are not waiting
For a break, you are the break. You are the cause. The world is the effect. 90 days of living in this state, of refusing to entertain a single doubt, of acting with the dignity of a master, and of working with the precision of a scientist, will change your life more than 10 years of trying. You will find that a great peace settles over you. The anxiety of the chase is gone, replaced by the calm of the manifestation. You are no longer a beggar at the gates of life. You are the owner of the estate, simply walking through the grounds and putting things in order. This is the law of inevitability. It is the final stage of the apprentice and the beginning of the master. So, I bid you rise each morning and greet the day as a victor. Do not look for signs of success. Be the sign. Speak your purpose with a quiet finality that admits no argument. Perform your work with such excellence that the world cannot ignore you. And through it all, keep your inner house in such perfect order that the light of certainty shines through your every act. When you do this, you are no longer a creature of chance. You are a creator of destiny. You have aligned yourself with the eternal laws of progress, and as long as the sun rises and the tides turn, your success is as inevitable as the dawn. Remember the words of the great poet, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." These are not merely lines of verse. They are the fundamental principles of the empire of business. To be the captain of your soul is to hold the tiller with a hand that never trembles, pointing the ship toward a harbor you have already seen in your mind's eye. The waves may beat against the hull and the winds may howl in the rigging, but the captain who knows his destination is already there in spirit. And where the spirit leads, the ship must surely follow. This is the law. Live by it, and you shall see the world yield to you as it yields to all those who have mastered the secret of the inevitable. Wait for no man's permission. Seek no man's praise. The reward of a thing well done is to have done it. But the world, in its justice, will add its own rewards in due time. Wealth, influence, and the respect of your fellows are the dividends of a character that has been invested in the law of certainty. Go forth now, not as one who is seeking a fortune, but as one who is already a millionaire in character and in purpose. The physical millions are but the outward sign of the inner reality. Live in that reality, and you shall surely see it made flesh. I trust you have begun to inhabit that mental mansion where success is no longer a guest, but the rightful owner. To live in the finished result is a state of grace in the world of affairs, but it requires a constant vigilance of the spirit to maintain. This brings us to our sixth lesson, a principle of such profound importance that it distinguishes the master of industry from the mere speculator, the law of character as the ultimate capital. In the empire of business, we deal in steel, in oil, in rail, and in gold. But beneath the surface of every contract and every exchange, we are dealing in the souls of men. I have often said that you may take away my factories, you may take away my railroads, and you may take away my fortune, but leave me my organization. Leave me the men of character with whom I have surrounded myself, and I shall build it all back within a few short years. Wealth is but the outward foliage of a tree. Character is the root. If the root is withered, the foliage will inevitably fall, no matter how much you try to prop it up with golden stakes. To act as if failure is impossible, you must build yourself upon a foundation that the fluctuations of the market cannot touch. The average man thinks that success will give him character. The wise man knows that character gives him success. I charge you to look upon your reputation not as a thing to be managed for the public eye, but as the very bone and marrow of your existence. A man who is loose with the truth in small matters will soon find himself entangled in a web of his own making in large ones. In the stern school of business, there is no substitute for a rigid, uncompromising integrity. A word given must be a bond as sacred as any signed and sealed parchment. I recall the early days of the iron trade in Pittsburgh. There were many men who sought to get ahead by sharp practice, by misrepresenting the quality of their ore, or by evading the spirit of a bargain when the prices shifted. They appeared to prosper for a season. They built fine houses and made a great show in the streets. But when the inevitable storms of financial panic arrived, they were the first to be swept away. Why? Because when they needed the credit and the confidence of their fellows to weather the gale, they found the vaults of trust were empty. But the man who had stood by his word when it cost him dearly, the man whose character was known to be as solid as the steel he produced, he was the one whom the banks and the great houses sustained. Credit is not a matter of collateral alone. It is a matter of character. You must understand that the modern world of industry is a vast interconnected machine that runs upon the oil of mutual confidence. The man who breaks that confidence is a saboteur of the highest order. If you wish to rise, you must make yourself indispensable not only through your skill, but through your reliability. Be the man of whom it is said, if he says it will be done, it is as good as finished. This reputation is a form of capital that pays higher dividends than any stock or bond. It attracts to you the very best men as partners and subordinates, for high-character men will not long serve a master whom they cannot respect. I have often spoken of the precious heritage of poverty, and here is where its value is most clearly seen. The lad who is born into a family where every penny must be earned and every loaf shared learns the fundamental laws of character through necessity. He learns the value of thrift, the dignity of labor, and the sacredness of a promise. He does not have the crutches of inherited wealth to lean upon. He must stand upon his own feet or fall. This independence is the very soil in which the great captains of industry are grown. If you were born poor, do not bewail it. Thank the great administrator for the finest training ground a human soul can have. You are learning to build your empire from the inside out. Character also demands a certain simplicity of life. I have little regard for the man who, upon making his first few $1,000s, immediately begins to live in a style that suggests he has already arrived at the summit. This is a betrayal of the law of growth. The man of true power remains a worker at heart. He does not seek the ease of the club or the vanity of the social circle. His joy is in the work itself. I urge you to live well within your means, not merely to save money, though thrift is the daughter of wisdom, but to keep your mind free from the anxieties of debt and the distractions of luxury. A mind that is preoccupied with the payment of a tailor's bill cannot focus upon the expansion of a great works. Furthermore, character is expressed through your attitude toward your fellow workers. I have always maintained that there is no such thing as independent wealth. All wealth is social in its origin. The man at the head of a firm is a partner with the man at the furnace and the man at the desk.
To treat those who serve you with anything less than a just and sympathetic consideration is a mark of a small and unrefined character. I have never known a truly great leader who was a tyrant. A tyrant may be obeyed through fear, but he is never served with the devotion that produces excellence. You must make your interests their interests. When your men feel that your success is their success, and that you are as concerned for their welfare as you are for your own, you have created a force that no competitor can overcome. I recall the words of my friend Mr. Rockefeller, who, despite the criticisms of the world, was a man of deep and quiet religious conviction. He viewed his wealth as a trust and himself as a steward. This sense of responsibility to a higher law is what gave him his immense composure. He was not working for himself alone. He was working as an agent of progress. When you adopt this view, when you see your business not as a means of selfish accumulation, but as a service to the community, your character takes on a new dignity. You are no longer chasing money, you are fulfilling a mission. This perspective cleanses the mind of the get-rich-quick fever, which has been the ruin of so many. Character also requires a courage of opinion. In the boardrooms of our nation, there are many yes-men, individuals who wait to see which way the wind blows before they speak. These men are the clerks of life, not the masters. The man of character speaks his truth plainly and stands by it even when he stands alone. He is not stubborn for the sake of pride, but he is immovable when a principle is at stake. I have often been the lone voice in a committee, only to see the others eventually come around to my view because it was rooted in the solid ground of fact and law. The world admires a man who has a mind of his own and the courage to use it. Thrift, as I have mentioned, is an essential element of character. The man who cannot save a portion of his earnings, no matter how small they may be, will never be a master of others. He is a slave to his own appetites. Thrift is not parsimony, it is foresight. It is the act of sacrificing a small pleasure today for a great achievement tomorrow. I began my savings when I was earning pennies, and that habit allowed me to seize the first small opportunities for investment that led to my fortune. If you cannot master your own purse, you can never master the purse of the public. I also charge you to be a man of continuous education. The mind that stops growing begins to decay. A man of character is a student to the end of his days. He reads the best books, he observes the methods of the most successful men, and he reflects on his own experiences. He does not think he knows it all because he has had a little success. He knows that the laws of business are as vast as the laws of the universe, and he seeks to understand them more deeply with every passing year. This humility in the face of knowledge is a mark of true greatness. Remember, my friends, that your character is the only thing you will take with you when you depart this life, but it is also the only thing that will allow you to enjoy your success while you are here. I have known many millionaires who were the most miserable of men because they had sacrificed their integrity, their health, and their friendships in the pursuit of gold. They possessed the checks, but they did not possess the character. Do not fall into this snare. Build your business on the rock of honor, and you will find that it stands when the houses built upon the sand have vanished. To act as if failure is impossible is to trust in the power of a right character. If you are a man of industry, integrity, and intelligence, the world has no choice but to reward you. It may take time. The oak does not grow in a night, but the outcome is certain. You are cooperating with the very laws of life. I bid you, then, to guard your character as the pearl of great price. Let no temptation, however glittering, lead you away from the path of rectitude. Be just, be generous, be industrious, and be true. When you are these things, you are already a success, regardless of the balance in your ledger. The money is but the shadow that follows the substance of the man. Live so that you can look any man in the eye and tell him the truth. Live so that your workers respect you and your competitors honor you. Live so that when you are old, you can look back upon a life that has been a benefit to your race.
This is the empire of business in its highest sense. It is a kingdom of character, and you are its sovereign. 90 days of such living, of absolute honesty, of selfless service, and of disciplined habit will give you a sense of power that all the gold in the Klondike cannot buy. You will walk with a new step, for you will know that you are a man of the law. And when you speak of your future, speak with the quiet confidence of one whose foundations are secure. You do not need to boast of what you will do, for your character is already doing it. You do not need to fear the failure of next year, for a man of character cannot fail. He can only be delayed or refined. His failures are but the lessons that lead to his ultimate triumph. Go forth then, with your heart full of courage and your mind fixed upon the right. The world is waiting for men of your stamp. It is hungry for leadership that is rooted in honor. Be that leader, and you shall see an empire rise at your feet, not by chance, but by the inevitable decree of character. I trust that the principles of character and inevitable result have begun to weave themselves into the very fabric of your daily conduct. We have spoken of the arm that labors and the mind that commands, but we must now turn our attention to the great theater of action where these forces meet the world of men. This brings us to our seventh lesson, a doctrine that is often misunderstood by the selfish, yet is the very cornerstone of every enduring fortune, the law of cooperation and the mastermind. In the empire of business, no man is an island unto himself. I have often said that my own success was not due to any solitary genius of my own, but to my ability to surround myself with men who were far cleverer than I in their particular fields. I was not a master of the chemistry of steel, nor was I the most adept at the intricate bookkeeping of the railroads, but I was a master of men. I understood that a group of individual minds, when harmonized under a single definite purpose and governed by a spirit of perfect cooperation, creates a third power, a mastermind that is vastly greater than the sum of its parts. To act as if failure is impossible, you must learn to multiply your own strength through the strength of others. The average man, driven by a small and suspicious vanity, fears to surround himself with strong men. He prefers to be the one-eyed king in the country of the blind, fearing that if his subordinates are too capable, they might eclipse him or seize his throne. This is the mark of a clerk, not a captain. The true leader seeks the highest talent he can find. He honors it, he rewards it, and above all, he integrates it into a unified force. I once had a tombstone designed for myself with the inscription, "Here lies a man who knew how to enlist in his service better men than himself." This is not an admission of weakness, it is a declaration of the highest form of business wisdom. Cooperation is not merely a matter of hiring labor, it is a matter of creating a union of hearts and minds. In my mills, I did not want mere hands, I wanted partners. I wanted every man, from the manager to the lad at the furnace, to feel that the Carnegie Steel Company was his company, and that its triumph was his triumph. We achieved this through the sliding scale of wages and by allowing our best men to become shareholders in the works. We made their interests our interests. When men are working for themselves, they bring a vitality and an inventiveness to their labor that no amount of driving from a taskmaster can produce. You must learn that the man who seeks to keep all the profits for himself will soon find he has no one to help him carry the losses. I recall the early days of my partnership with men like Henry Phipps and later Charles Schwab. We were a mastermind in the truest sense. We met frequently, we debated our plans with absolute candor, and once a decision was reached, we moved as a single body. There was no room for petty jealousy or the poisoned tongue of gossip within our inner circle.
We understood that if we fell out among ourselves, the great structure we were building would crumble like a house of cards. The strength of a cable lies in the twisting together of many small wires. No single wire could hold the weight of the bridge, but together they defy the storms. You must look upon your associates not as rivals to be overcome, but as allies to be cultivated. If you find a man whose character is high and whose skill surpasses your own in a certain branch of the work, do not envy him, enlist him. Give him the freedom to exercise his talents, reward him with a just share of the results, and you will find that his success multiplies your own 100-fold. This is the secret of the great trusts and corporations that have revolutionized our modern world. They are not the work of one man, but the coordinated effort of thousands, all moving toward a single end under a disciplined leadership. However, cooperation must be rooted in a spirit of perfect harmony. If there is friction among your leaders, if there is distrust or hidden agendas, the power of the mastermind is lost. Friction in a machine wastes energy as heat. Friction in a business wastes energy as conflict. You must be the great harmonizer. It is your duty to smooth over the petty differences of your men, to keep their eyes fixed upon the great goal, and to ensure that the spirit of the organization remains one of mutual helpfulness. I have always found that a kind word and a sympathetic ear do more to increase the output of a mill than the most modern machinery. I must also warn you against the lone wolf mentality. The man who thinks he can do it all himself is doomed to a life of small affairs. He may achieve a modest competence, but he will never build an empire. He is limited by the number of hours in his own day and the capacity of his own brain. But the man who understands the law of cooperation can work 24 hours a day through the hands of others and think with the power of 1,000 brains. He is an administrator of energy. He knows that his primary task is not to perform the labor, but to ensure that the labor is performed in the most efficient and harmonious manner possible. My friend, Mr. Rockefeller, understood this principle perhaps better than any man who ever lived. He built the Standard Oil Company by bringing together his competitors, men who were once fighting each other to the death, and convincing them that they would be far more prosperous as allies than as enemies. He replaced the chaos of competition with the order of cooperation. He created a mastermind that spanned the globe. Despite the outcries of those who did not understand the law of progress, he was a great benefactor to the industry, for he eliminated waste and brought stability to a market that was once a scene of ruinous conflict. To apply this law in your own life, you must first define your mastermind group. Who are the individuals whose knowledge, experience, and character complement your own? They may be your partners, your employees, or even friends and mentors with whom you meet for counsel. Bind them to you through the spirit of the mastermind, which is a spirit of absolute loyalty and mutual benefit. Do not seek to get something for nothing. Be prepared to give more than you receive, and you will find that the law of compensation returns your investment with staggering interest. Character, which we spoke of previously, is the only cement strong enough to hold a mastermind together. If the men in your circle cannot trust one another, the group will dissolve at the first sign of pressure. You must be the example of the integrity you demand from others. When your word is known to be inviolable and your fairness is beyond question, you will find that the best men in the world are eager to join their fortunes with yours. They are looking for a rock upon which to build, and you must be that rock. Furthermore, you must encourage the initiative of those who serve you. A mastermind is not a group of puppets moved by a single string. It is a collection of living, thinking units. I always made a point to listen to the suggestions of the youngest clerks and the humblest workmen. Some of our greatest improvements in the manufacture of steel came from the men who were closest to the work. When a man knows that his ideas will be heard and rewarded, he becomes a creator, not a drudge. He brings his whole soul to the enterprise. This social wealth of ideas is the most valuable asset any firm can possess. Remember, my friends, that the golden rule is not merely a piece of Sunday school sentiment, it is the most practical law of business ever discovered. To do unto others as you would have them do unto you is the very essence of cooperation. If you treat your workers with justice, if you stand by your partners in times of trouble, and if you deal fairly with your customers, you are building an organization that is rooted in the very laws of the universe. Such an organization cannot fail, for it has the goodwill of mankind as its silent partner. Goodwill is the only asset that the competition cannot steal and the tax gatherer cannot diminish. As you look toward the coming year, ask yourself, how can I better serve those who work with me? How can I create a more perfect harmony among my associates? How can I multiply my strength through the law of cooperation? Do not be afraid to share the honors or the profits. The more you give away in a spirit of justice, the more will flow back to you through the law of increase. I became the richest man in the world, not by hoarding my wealth, but by distributing it among the men who helped me create it. My young geniuses, as I called them, all became millionaires in their own right, and in making them rich, they made me 1,000 times richer. This is the path of the true master. He does not climb over the bodies of his fellows, he rises by lifting them with him. He understands that the empire of business is a commonwealth of effort. 90 days of practicing this law, of seeking to help others succeed, of harmonizing your team, and of listening with a humble heart will give you a power that no solitary striving could ever achieve. You will find that obstacles which once seemed like mountains are now moved easily by the combined strength of your mastermind. Go forth then and be a builder of men. Seek out the talented, the honest, and the industrious, and bind them to your cause through the spirit of cooperation. Let your firm be a model of harmony, and your life be a testament to the power of the unified will. When you do this,
failure becomes impossible, for you are no longer a single man fighting the world. You are a world of energy moving toward a single purpose. The great laws of progress are on your side, and the outcome is as certain as the stars in their courses. This is the seventh law, the law of the mastermind. Master it, and you have mastered the secret of the ages. Wait for my signal before we proceed to the eighth lesson, where we shall discuss the law of concentration and the one idea. But for now, reflect deeply upon the man you have chosen to walk with you. For a man is known by the company he keeps, and a business is judged by the spirit of its organization. Ensure that your spirit is one of cooperation, and the empire of business will surely be yours. I trust you have begun to see that a man's strength is not limited by his own two hands, but is multiplied 1,000-fold through the law of cooperation. Yet, even with a great army of supporters, a general will lose the day if his forces are scattered across too wide a front. This brings us to the eighth, and perhaps the most practical of all the laws of the empire of business, the law of concentration, or what I have famously termed the one idea. In the present age, we hear much of the jack of all trades, the man who prides himself on having an iron in every fire. I tell you plainly, such a man is a candidate for failure. The great fortunes and the great reputations of our time are built by men who have mastered the art of concentration, men who have chosen one definite line of endeavor and stuck to it with the tenacity of a bulldog. My advice to every young man who aspires to lead is this: do not scatter your shot. Put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket with a vigilance that never sleeps. Look around you and you will see that the men who succeed are the ones who can say no to 1,000 tempting opportunities in order to say a resounding yes to their one true calling. I recall my own early days when I was tempted to invest in all manner of ventures, oil wells, silver mines, and diverse patents that promised quick riches. I saw many of my fellows doing exactly that. They were diversifying, as they call it, which is often just a polite word for scattering one's brains. They ended by knowing a little about everything and being masters of nothing. I resolved then that the manufacture of steel would be my life's work. I turned my back on every distraction. I studied the chemistry of iron, the economics of transportation, and the psychology of the market as they related to that one industry. I became a specialist when the world was full of amateurs. Because my energy was not leaked out through a dozen different channels, it built up a pressure behind my one idea that eventually swept away all competition. The average man lacks the one-idea mind because he lacks the courage of his own decision. He is constantly looking over the fence to see if his neighbor's pasture is greener. He hears of a fortune being made in real estate, and he leaves his desk to buy land. He hears of a strike in the gold fields, and he drops his tools to go prospecting. He is like a stream that spreads out over a marsh. It has no current, no depth, and no power. But the man of concentration is like that same stream forced through a narrow gorge. It becomes a torrent that can move the heaviest machinery. You must find your gorge. You must decide upon the one thing you can do better than any other man, and then you must live, breathe, and sleep with that idea until it becomes a part of your very soul. Consider the history of the great inventions. Was the telegraph the result of a man who dabbled in a dozen sciences? No, it was the result of Mr. Morse's absolute obsession with the transmission of signals. Was the reaper the work of a man who divided his time between the farm and the counting house? No, it was Mr. McCormick's singular devotion to the mechanical harvest. These men were often called cranks by their neighbors, but a crank is simply a man whose concentration is so intense that it unsettles the comfortable mediocrity of others. In the world of business, we need more cranks. We need men who are so focused upon the excellence of their product and the efficiency of their service that they have no time for the idle distractions of the day. Concentration also applies to your daily labor. I have always maintained that the man who is to rise must do more than is expected of him in his present position, but he must also do it with a singular focus. When you are at your desk, the rest of the world should cease to exist. If you are writing a letter, let that letter be the most important task in the universe. If you are auditing an account, let every figure be a matter of life and death. This habit of giving oneself entirely to the task at hand is the secret of speed and accuracy. The man who works with one eye on the clock and the other on his evening's entertainment is a man who will always be a subordinate. But the man who is fused with his work is the one who eventually becomes the master of it. I must also warn you that concentration requires a certain solitude of spirit. You cannot be a man of the one idea if you are constantly seeking the approval of the crowd. The crowd is always divided. It has 1,000 opinions and no convictions. If you listen to the voices of the street, you will find your own resolve beginning to waver. You must learn to go into the silence of your own mind and consult the laws of your business. I have often made my most important decisions while walking alone or sitting in my library, away from the noise of the exchange. This internal concentration allows you to see the long view, which is invisible to the man who is caught up in the daily scramble of many ideas. My friend, Mr. Rockefeller, was a supreme master of this law. He did not care for the social whirl or the pursuit of diverse interests. He focused upon the refining and distribution of oil with a cold mathematical intensity. He saw that the world needed light, and he resolved to provide that light more cheaply and more reliably than any other man. He ignored the criticisms of the press and the threats of his rivals. He kept his eyes on the one idea of efficiency.
Because he concentrated his vast intellect upon that one point, he built an organization that was the wonder of the industrial world. He proved that a single mind, when concentrated, can govern a global empire. To apply this law in the coming year, you must first perform a cleansing of your affairs. Look at your activities and ask which of these are contributing to my main purpose and which are merely thieves of my time. You will find that you are doing many things out of habit or out of a desire to please others that have no bearing upon your ultimate success. You must have the courage to prune these dead branches from the tree of your life. The more you cut away the non-essential, the more the vital sap of your energy will flow into the main trunk. Concentration is as much about what you stop doing as it is about what you start doing. You must also learn to concentrate your capital. Many men make the mistake of spreading their small savings across a dozen different investments. They buy a few shares here, a piece of land there, and a part of a business somewhere else. They think they are being safe, but they are actually being weak. They have no influence in any of these ventures because their interest is too small. I have always preferred to invest my capital in the business I know and control. By concentrating my wealth in the steel industry, I was able to direct its growth, ensure its integrity, and reap the full harvest of its success. If you believe in your one idea, back it with everything you have. A man who is all in on his own vision moves with a power that the diversifier can never understand. Furthermore, you must concentrate your associations. Do not spend your time with those who have no purpose in life, for their lack of focus is contagious. Surround yourself with men who are also possessed by a one idea, even if their idea is different from your own. The vibration of a concentrated mind is a tonic to the soul. In our mastermind groups, we were all men of singular purpose. Even when we disagreed on details, we were unified in our devotion to the advancement of our industry. This mutual concentration created an atmosphere of achievement that made failure seem like a foreign language. Remember, my friends, that the mind is like a magnifying glass. If you move it rapidly over a piece of paper, you produce no result. But if you hold it perfectly still, concentrating the rays of the sun on one single spot, you will soon see a flame. Your one idea is that spot. Your decision, your faith, and your labor are the rays of the sun. Hold them steady. Do not let the winds of opinion or the clouds of doubt move your glass. If you hold it long enough, the flame of success will surely burst forth. I charge you to become a specialist in your chosen field. The days of the generalist are passing. The future belongs to the man who knows more about his one business than any other living soul. Whether you are a merchant, a manufacturer, or a professional man, make yourself the supreme court of your craft. This requires a concentration of study and observation that few are willing to give, but the rewards are immense. The world is always willing to pay a premium for the man who is the master of his one idea. As you prepare for the challenges of next year, take a sheet of paper and write at the top, "My one idea." Beneath it, list the actions that will lead to its fulfillment. Then, on the other side, list the distractions you will henceforth refuse. Be ruthless with yourself. Success is a jealous mistress. She demands your whole heart and your undivided attention. If you give her that, she will crown you with a glory that the scattered man can only dream of. 90 days of absolute concentration, of saying no to the trivial and yes to the essential, will reveal a power within you that you never knew existed. You will find that your work becomes more efficient, your decisions become more accurate, and your influence grows daily. You are no longer a chaser of many shadows. You are the master of one substance. This is the 8th law, and it is the law that turns the industrious worker into the captain of industry. Wait for my signal before we proceed to the 9th lesson, where we shall discuss the law of service and the secret of the surplus. But for now, fix your gaze upon your one idea.
Let it be the first thing you think of in the morning and the last thing you contemplate at night. When you have achieved this level of concentration, you are already halfway to your goal. The world will make way for you, for it always recognizes the man who knows exactly where he is going and will not be turned aside. I trust that the law of concentration has taught you to prune the dead branches from your life so that the vital sap of your energy may flow into one great trunk. But as your one idea begins to bear fruit, and as your mastermind group multiplies your strength, you must prepare yourself for the most sublime responsibility of the empire of business. This brings us to the 9th lesson, a principle that separates the mere accumulator of gold from the true architect of civilization, the law of service and the secret of the surplus. In the early days of our industrial expansion, many men believed that the aim of business was merely to get, to snatch, to hoard, and to wall in one's gains. I tell you that such a view is as narrow as it is doomed. The true law of success is the law of service. A business that does not serve the community has no more right to exist than a weed in a wheat field. To act as if failure is impossible, you must align your purpose with the welfare of your fellow men. When your primary motive is to provide a better product, a more efficient service, or a cheaper necessity for the masses, you enlist the very laws of progress as your silent partners. You are no longer working for a pittance, you are working for the race. I have often maintained that the man who acquires vast wealth has a duty that is both sacred and heavy. Surplus wealth is a set of talents committed to his charge, and he is but a trustee and agent for his poorer brethren. He should bring to their service his superior wisdom, his experience, and his administrative ability, which are the very qualities that allowed him to amass the fortune in the first place. The secret of the surplus is not in how much you can keep, but in how wisely you can distribute. I have lived by the motto that the man who dies thus rich dies disgraced. By this, I mean the man who hoards his millions to the end, leaving them only when he can no longer hold them in his cold grasp. The true master of industry distributes his surplus during his lifetime, ensuring that it becomes a fountain of blessing for generations to come. Think of the great libraries I have had the privilege of founding. Why did I choose libraries? Because they provide the ladders upon which the aspiring can climb. They do not give something for nothing, which only saps the spirit of independence. They give the tools to the man who is willing to labor for his own advancement. This is the highest form of service, to help those who will help themselves. When you build your business upon this principle, when you ask, how can I make this enterprise a benefit to my workmen, my customers, and my neighbors, you build a foundation that the storms of envy and the tides of politics cannot wash away. You are no longer a plutocrat, you are a benefactor. I recall a conversation with my friend, Mr. Rockefeller, regarding the business of benevolence. He approached his giving with the same cold, clear-eyed precision that he approached the oil trade. He did not give to beggars or to fleeting emotions. He gave to foundations and to trusts that would study the needs of humanity with scientific rigor. He understood that to give away money unwisely is to do more harm than good. Service must be organized, it must be efficient, it must be directed toward the root of the evil, not merely the branches. This is the mastermind applied to charity. When you apply the same concentration to service that you apply to your one idea, you create a legacy that survives long after your factories have turned to dust. You must understand that the secret of the surplus applies even before you have reached your first million. It begins with the surplus of effort. The man who does more than he is paid for is already practicing the law of service. He is putting the world in his debt. By a law that is as certain as the sunrise, the world must eventually pay that debt with interest.
If you are a clerk, serve your employer with such devotion and intelligence that he cannot afford to lose you. If you are a manufacturer, make your product so honest and so useful that the public demands it. This surplus of service is the only insurance policy against failure. While the man who does the minimum is the first to be let go in a crisis, the man of surplus service is the last to remain and the first to be promoted. I charge you to look upon your workmen not as costs to be reduced, but as partners to be elevated. I have found that the highest dividends are paid by the investment in humanity. In my own works, I sought to bridge the chasm between the employer and the employee by being to their faults a little blind and to their virtues very kind. I shared the profits through bonuses and stock, and I built halls and parks for their recreation. I did not do this out of a weak sentimentality, but out of a profound understanding of the law of cooperation. A happy, prosperous, and self-respecting workman is a more efficient workman. He brings his heart to the furnace as well as his arm. When you serve your men, they will serve you with a loyalty that money alone cannot buy. The secret of the surplus also demands a rigid economy in your personal life. As I have often said, the man who lives beyond his means is a slave, but the man who saves a surplus, however small, is a master. This surplus of capital gives you the independence that is necessary for bold decision. It allows you to wait for the right opportunity and to act with confidence when it arrives. I began my fortune by saving pennies from my meager wages as a bobbin boy and a messenger. Those pennies were the seed corn of the Carnegie Steel Company. If you consume all your seed corn today, you will have no harvest tomorrow. Practice thrift not as a misery, but as a strategy of power. Furthermore, you must guard against the vanity of possession. Many men become possessed by their possessions. They spend their nights worrying about their houses, their horses, and their social standing. They have lost the concentration that made them successful in the first place. You must remain a worker even when you are a millionaire. Your surplus wealth should be a tool in your hand, not a chain around your neck. I have always preferred the simple life of the mind to the gaudy display of the nouveau riche. A great book or a fine conversation is worth more than a dozen gold-plated carriages. When you keep your life simple, your mind remains clear for the service of your one idea and the administration of your surplus. I recall the words of my young associate, Mr. Schwab, who possessed a genius for the human relation in industry. He said that he could get more work out of men by praise than by criticism. This is the law of service in speech. A word of encouragement to a struggling subordinate is a form of surplus that costs you nothing but pays immense returns in morale and effort. Do not be stingy with your appreciation. The world is a cold place for many, and the man who brings the sunshine of recognition to his fellows is a man who will never lack for allies. This is how you build an organization of hearts. As you move through the coming year, I want you to ask yourself each evening, whom have I served today? What surplus have I created for the world? Have I performed my work with a view to the benefit of others or only for my own gain? If you find that your motives have been purely selfish, do not be surprised if your progress is slow. Selfishness is a form of friction that slows the wheels of success. But when you move with the spirit of service, you move with the current of the universe. You will find that doors open, capital arrives, and luck visits you with increasing frequency. You are no longer fighting the world, you are feeding it. The law of service is the ultimate act as if. When you act as if you are a public servant, you acquire the dignity and the authority of a public official. You no longer need to scramble for your place. Your place is prepared for you by the needs of your fellow men. The empire of business is not a collection of private hoards. It is a vast system of mutual service. The man who understands this is the man who truly think and grow rich, for he realizes that his riches are but the measure of his service. 90 days of practicing the secret of the surplus, of giving more than is expected, of saving a portion of every dollar, and of seeking to be a blessing to your workmen will transform your character and your credit. You will find that you have a reserve of power that others lack. You will walk with the steady step of a man who knows his foundations are deep. You are no longer afraid of failing, for you know that the world cannot afford to let a man of your service fail. You have become an indispensable part of the social fabric. Wait for my signal before we proceed to the 10th and final lesson, where we shall discuss the law of legacy and the summing up. But for now, look upon your work as a mission. Whether you are at the loom, the desk, or the director's table, perform your task as if you were doing it for the whole of humanity. Be the trustee of your talents and the steward of your opportunities. When you live by the law of service, the empire of business is not just a goal, it is a destiny. Go forth and serve, for in the service of your fellows you shall find the highest realization of your own soul.
My fellow workers, we have traveled a long road together, from the first spark of an irrevocable decision to the sublime heights of the law of service. You have seen that the empire of business is not a fortress built of cold stone and hoarded gold, but a living temple constructed from the refined character and unified purpose of men. We come now to the final lesson, the crowning achievement of any life lived under the laws of progress, the law of legacy and the summing up. To act as if failure is impossible is to live for something larger than the fleeting span of one's own years. A man truly begins to master the world only when he begins to think of his work in terms of centuries. I have always believed that it is the duty of the man of wealth and influence to set an example of modest, unostentatious living, shunning display or extravagance, to provide moderately for the legitimate wants of those dependent upon him, and, after doing so, to consider all surplus revenues which come to him simply as trust funds, which he is called upon to administer, and strictly bound as a matter of duty to administer in the manner which, in his judgment, is best calculated to produce the most beneficial results for the community. This is the law of legacy. It is the realization that we are but stewards of the forces of nature, and that our true success is measured by the light we leave behind. You must understand that the success the world sees is often but the shadow of the true victory. The true victory is the transformation of the self. I began my life as a poor lad in Dunfermline, and if I had died with nothing but the character I built through labor and thrift, I would still have considered myself a successful man. Wealth is a great power, but it is a power that brings with it a heavy burden of responsibility. I have known many men who were crushed by their millions because they did not have the character to administer them. They were rich in the eyes of the tax-gatherer, but bankrupt in the eyes of the great administrator. I charge you, therefore, not to chase the shadow, but to build the substance. Build the man, and the millions will take care of themselves. In these 10 lessons, I have laid before you the machinery of achievement. Let us review the gears of this great engine. It begins with the burning of the ships, the refusal to tolerate the thought of retreat. It is sustained by applied power, the mental command that forces the subconscious mind to obey the will. It is made manifest through relentless effort, the labor that proves the sincerity of the soul. It is refined by inner government, the mastery of the tongue and the heart. It is made certain by the law of inevitability, the identity of the master assumed before the first dollar is earned. It is anchored in character, the ultimate capital of the world. It is multiplied through cooperation, the harmony of the mastermind. It is focused by concentration, the devotion to the one idea.
and it is sanctified by service, the secret of the surplus that blesses both the giver and the receiver. I recall the words of my friend, the great philosopher of the mind, who said that whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. This is not a poetic sentiment. It is a law of the universe as rigid as the laws of steel and steam. If you conceive of yourself as a victor, if you believe in the laws I have described, and if you act with the persistence of the tides, there is no power on earth that can keep you from your goal. The world is a vast laboratory of opportunity, and you are the scientist. You are not at the mercy of luck or fate. You are the master of cause, and the world is the effect. I have often been asked what I would do if I had to start my life over again with nothing but my 2 hands and the knowledge I now possess. My answer is simple. I would do exactly what I did before, but with more confidence in the law. I would start as a messenger, a clerk, or a laborer, and I would make myself the most industrious, the most thrifty, and the most reliable servant in the firm. I would save my pennies, study my trade, and wait for the opportunity that always comes to the man who is ready. I would not ask for favors, and I would not complain of my lot. I would know that the precious heritage of poverty was my greatest asset, for it would force me to build the character that wealth requires. The coming year, which we began by discussing, is but a small segment of the great work of your life. Do not be discouraged if the results do not appear by the 1st of January. The oak does not ask the sun for a harvest in a week. It grows by rings, year by year, until it defies the gale. You must grow in the same way. Every day lived in accordance with these laws adds a ring to your character. Every temptation resisted, every hour of concentrated labor, and every act of service strengthens the fiber of your being. In time, you will find that you have become a giant in your field, not by chance, but by the inevitable expansion of a law-abiding soul. I charge you to remember that the empire of business is a kingdom of service. The man who seeks to build a fortune by tearing down his neighbor is building on the sand. The only enduring wealth is that which adds to the wealth of the world. Whether you build a railroad, write a book, or manage a household, do it with the aim of making the world a little better, a little brighter, and a little more efficient for those who come after you. This is the only legacy that survives the grave. When you live for this purpose, failure is impossible, for even your setbacks become lessons for the race. I have spoken much of Mr. Rockefeller and Mr. Edison and others who have led our industrial age. We were not gods. We were men who discovered a few simple laws and had the courage to follow them. We were often weary, often criticized, and often misunderstood. But we had a definite major purpose, and we refused to be turned aside. We understood that the mind of man is the only thing in the universe that can be completely controlled, and we used that control to create the world we saw in our imagination. You have that same power. The tools are in your hands. The fire of decision is in your heart. The road is before you. As this lesson concludes, I want you to sit in silence for a moment and contemplate the man you have decided to become. See him in your mind's eye, calm, industrious, wealthy, and wise. Feel the weight of his responsibility and the joy of his service. Then rise and walk as if that man were already here. Speak as he speaks, work as he works, give as he gives. The world will soon recognize the transformation and will begin to pay you the dividends of your new character. You are no longer an apprentice, you are a fellow worker in the great task of civilization. I bid you a courageous and industrious year. Let it be a year of no retreat. Let it be a year where you prove to yourself and to the world that the gospel of wealth is a gospel of action. Be thrifty with your time, be generous with your service, and be absolute in your faith. The laws of the empire of business are on your side, and the great administrator of the universe watches your progress with a favorable eye. Go forth then and build your empire, not for yourself alone, but for the benefit of all mankind. The task is great, the laws are sure, and the outcome is in your hands. I shall watch from the heights of my own experience, knowing that among you are the future captains of industry and the future benefactors of our race. Be worthy of the heritage you have received and leave a heritage that is even greater. This is the final word. The work is yours. The law is eternal. The success is inevitable. Farewell, my friends, and may your labor be a blessing to the world.